couple weeks back, I did a video called How Investment Propaganda is Creating a Retirement Crisis. Buried deep in the video was a free tool that I found super valuable, and I'm making a shorter video today so that I can make sure to give it away. There's no email address required, nothing that you need to give me. It's a sequence of returns Excel spreadsheet calculator that will help you calculate how does negative market returns affect your portfolio. You can put a dollar amount in there. The formula in there will show you what amount of required gains you'll need to get back to break even, and then also how long it will take or may take if you use the historic average rate of return on the S&P 500. Now, obviously, as a disclaimer, this is not a calculator intended to be used for guaranteed outcomes. It's just a way to give you a framework to understand how risk actually affects your portfolio, because in investment world, we use terms like beta and alpha, and these are not really relatable terms for the average consumer. It's a lot easier to look at a spreadsheet like the one that's going to be a free giveaway in this video that shows you exactly how the proportional effect of losses and then the required gains to get back to break even work. So stay tuned in this video. It's going to jump right to a screen share video of me showing how to use the spreadsheet calculator. And then you can use the link in the description of this video to download the calculator and use it yourself. And if you do have questions on how to use it, you can shoot us an email at eric@thepeakfp.com, or you can put comments in the video below. My hope is that many people will get their hands on this calculator without restriction and make better investment decisions, or at least feel more educated as a result. So thank you for your attention. Enjoy the sequence of returns calculator. Okay, so this is a simple model that has some formulas in here, and I'm just going to explain how this works. Again, I'll put this in the description so anybody who wants to can come in here and change the starting portfolio value or change the percent decline so you can start to understand and maybe put your own portfolio amounts in here and forecast how much a loss is going to affect your portfolio. So here's what I'm going to show in this model. We're going to take an example portfolio dollar amount. We're going to put in an example percent decline based on market performance. We're going to show the ending portfolio value, the actual gross amount of the loss, and then the amount of gain that is required to recover. And then based on the average return of the S&P, how long it takes to recover. All of this is a formula, so we can change any variable in here from the starting portfolio value or the decline amount, and it will automatically change the rest of it. So let's look at this really quickly. If you have a $1 million portfolio and you have a 10% market decline, which is pretty standard in any given year, the ending portfolio value at the end of that 10% decline is $900,000. That's an $100,000 loss. Now, this is one of the breakdowns I see when I speak to prospects or anybody in general, is that we tend to think that if we lose $100,000, all we need to do is gain that $100,000 back. And while that is true, as a percent, you need to gain a larger percent back because now you're starting with a smaller dollar amount. So proportionally, $100,000 of loss out of $1 million portfolio is a 10% decline. But in order to gain $100,000 from that new starting portfolio value, which is $900,000, you need an 11.1% gain. All right. Now, this doesn't look like that big a difference when the losses are small, but let me tell you that the way this works is that losses are linear and the required gain that you need in order to recover is exponential. You need larger and larger gains proportionally as your losses accrue or increase in size. I'm going to show you in here because we're going to change the numbers. But what I want to also say, the final takeaway of this simple model at 10% here is that if you need 11.1% to regain back from $900,000 after that 10% decline, the question is, how long does that take? And the answer is that takes, the average return on the S&P is roughly 8.2%. The number of years to recover is 1.36. So you need 1.25 years roughly to recover that 10% loss. What happens? Now, 10% happens in any given year, and a lot of times that just smooths out. 20% losses, a typical bear market is in excess of 25 or 30% in decline. They don't happen that often, but a 10% decline happens almost annually. Between 10 and 30%, now they happen with less and less frequency. But let's just show the illustration, because when you're retiring or close to retiring, the biggest risk to you is time. If you're 63 and you plan to retire at 67, or if you're 55 and you plan to retire at 60, you just don't have a lot of time for your portfolio to smooth out losses. Now, that's simply a fact. Listen to the media and pretend to believe that we are just going to smooth out losses over time. It's okay. You have to really ask yourself, who does it benefit if I'm being told to just take losses on the chin, like it should just be okay, when that would be unacceptable in any other area of my life? But let's look at the math. Let's say that you have a 20% loss instead of a 10% loss. So starting with that same portfolio value, now you have an ending portfolio value of 800K, your loss is 200. Instead, you have a 20% decline, and now you need a 25% gain in order to recover that. A 20% decline might happen over a 1-year period. You now need 25% to recover that. And then again, the question arises, how much time? This tells us we need 3 years roughly to recover that using the average S&P historic rate of return. That means that you will have taken 1 year for the loss and now 3 years for the recovery, and now you're set up for 4 years to go from where you were to back to where you were. That's a 4-year journey to nowhere. Let's look at some more extreme real quickly, and then you can come in here if you want to and use, like I said, link in the description and play with this. But let's look at what happens if you have a 35% or a 30% loss. The reason I'll use this number is because in 2022, the average retail investor lost 30% in portfolio value. And while the market has performed well now in 2023, the question is, have retail investors recovered? And the answer is absolutely not in most cases. And you can see why here, because if you look at a 30% decline resulting in a $300,000 loss, now you don't need a 30% recovery, you need a 42.8% recovery. That's almost 43%. And then again, the question is, how long does that take? So you've had 1 year for the decline in 2022, and now you need roughly 5 years. 5 years to get back to where you were. So if you're 55 and you're retiring at 60, that means 55, you're going to be back where you were at 55 when you're at 60, and you've had inflation that whole time, you've had cost of living increases, and you haven't had any actual increase in portfolio value. Your retirement plan, if you had one, is all wrong because plans are built off of straight line annualized projections, and you can watch another video I have about the problem with straight line annualized projections. What I'm trying to get across here is just like we spend way too much time being brainwashed and propagandized to think about rate of return and growth as the only metric without any education. It's not our fault as consumers or your fault as consumers. We're being brainwashed to believe that there's no risk involved in this, or we should just accept the risk because it's small risk. And this is not small risk. 5 years to get your portfolio from where it was to where it will be, or to where it was again, break even, is a colossal waste of time. It's hard to really explain the mathematical impact or loss that happens there in order to get that recovery. Now let's add one more element to this. You can come in here at the top here and play with these numbers and change portfolio values and declines and all that stuff. I have another model down here. This is what's called a sequence of return model. So sequence of return is when you have negative portfolio returns, but then you also take income or distributions from the portfolio. Effectively, what you're doing when you take income from the portfolio is you're taking a pie and trimming the pie down to a slightly smaller size, and you're eating or taking income from that delta, the amount of the pie that you trimmed. And I want to just show what happens if you do take a 4%, you just use the standard 4% rule. You take your distribution as normal. You don't make any portfolio changes to play defense for losses. What happens? So in this model here, you have the same $1 million starting portfolio. You have your 30% market decline, let's say. You have a loss of 300K. Now you still take your distribution of 40,000 because you're doing it based on your starting portfolio value at the beginning of the year, which is what most ill-equipped financial advisors or online articles will tell you to do. Now your ending portfolio value at the end of 2022 in this hypothetical situation is $660,000. Now you need a 51.5% gain to get back to where you started at the beginning of that year, and using the average rate of return, that's 6.28 years to get back. So you're taking the distribution and you're actually increasing the amount of gain, the required gain, to recover from 42.86 to 51.52. Your 4% distribution doesn't require 4% just to get back. It requires 9%. And this is to show that losses and distributions are linear. The required recovery or the required growth is exponential. You need way more growth to recover for distributions or losses from the portfolio value. We found that video helpful. If you do have questions, again, an invitation to ask questions using the comments section below in YouTube. You can also visit our website at www.thepeakfp.com. I have a bunch of helpful written guides that complement and supplement this type of information. You can also schedule a free consultation with me and my team if you want to ask questions about this. And if you have suggestions for other types of content like this, please write them in the comments below. Each week we publish a video that tries to do the best we can at educating investors and retirement planning clients based on the conversations we're having with our existing clients. So thanks again for your time and attention, and we'll see you in the next video.